Welcome to our video. I'm so glad that you found us and you are here to hear what we have to say because we're really cool people here. I'm here with Bracha Lavranov, and first let me tell you who I am. I am Coach Red. I am a parenting coach and I work to bring peace and safety to families. I work in the United States, but I am open to other countries. If you're looking at this from another country, how to reach me will be in the description below the video. So hang on, make sure to make comments and ask us any kind of questions you want, and we will answer them when we see the comments. I'm here with Bracha Lavranov, who is really an amazing person, which is why I asked her to be in a video with me. I'm like, this is a really cool collaboration. And she is a mother of 10 children. God bless her. She has one daughter who's special needs. She has a master's degree in counseling from St. John's University. She's a certified life coach, just like myself. You see, life coaches don't have to be in competition with each other. We can work together. And she's an empathy trainer, which I love because that is like my tagline. Empathy is really the answer to all relationships. So this is Bracha. So Bracha, you are a mother of 10. So first, like, do you ever stop? You ever stop moving?
So somebody actually once comments to me, you're perky from the minute you wake up until the minute that you go to sleep. So I think I try to like hold on to that perky mindset.
Perky mindset. I think that's kind of funny, actually. So you have to have a lot of energy to have 10 children.
Yeah.
And also an empathy trainer. Let's just talk about that for a minute. So how did you become an empathy trainer and who are you training?
Sure. So I actually, when I had my fifth child, he had a lot of medical needs. So we were repeat customers in a hospital. And as being a repeat customer in the hospital, you kind of get to know the nurses and the doctors and the attendings. And the director of pediatrics actually asked me to be a member of the family advisory board. And so I did that for many years. And then they saw a need to improve their patient satisfaction and patient experience. So in doing that, they hired me as a parent, pretty much, to tell stories and to give pointers to incoming residents and resident nurses in the hospital.
And that's what you're doing.
Yeah. So I work mainly pediatrics, but I've done other empathy trainings as well in different departments that are not used to working with pediatrics. So I do that as a consultant, which is amazing. I absolutely love to clue people into what it's like from the family perspective when a child is either in the hospital or has special needs.
So clarify for me, do you have one special needs child or two?
Okay, so
daughter.
Right. So my fifth child had a lot of medical concerns, and my sixth child was born with Down syndrome. So we had two in a row. The geneticist basically said you were hit by lightning twice because they weren't hereditary forms. They were in the genes, but not hereditary. So
right, just random things that happened. Yeah, I could totally relate to that. Like, that's why I always say like a healthy birth is actually a miracle. I mean, you had 8 healthy births and those were the miracles, these 2 beautiful blessings that really, it seems like the special needs kids that you had actually led you into this great career of empathy training and life coaching.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because when my first child was born, I had already with a master's degree in counseling. And I had worked with adults with special needs and adults that had psychiatric concerns. So I kind of had the schooling before. Then life happened, and then I became a certified life coach and did a lot of these kind of trainings and support groups for parents of children with special needs and siblings of children with special needs as well.
Right. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Okay. So your fifth child, his needs are taken care of like by medical science, like medicine takes care of it and then he's done. So the one who you really have to focus a lot of attention on is your sixth child. Is that correct?
Right. So my sixth child, she's almost 16 actually. And her name is Yehudis. She is an amazing child. I've learned so much from her. When she was little, people, used to say things like, "Oh, God gives you what you can handle." I wasn't so sure at the time.
Right.
That's something that I think a lot of parents out there who have children with special needs hear. It's depending on the level of functioning. Everybody has a different situation. Everybody has a child that has, when they say special needs, like it's specifically special to the child. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a large term.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a way huge, large amount of different special needs, and every kid has every different. Oh, yeah. It's so broad, but it's easier. And in my opinion, I think it's more private to say special needs rather than to say the diagnosis. Like
Yeah.
in when I'm having a meeting like this, or I'm having an interview or talking to somebody, it's just way better for privacy than to say, oh, this person has multiple sclerosis. This person has cerebral, like, no, this person has special needs or has, different abilities. There's so many different ways of saying it,
Sure.
but that just affords privacy on some level.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it's because my daughter has Down syndrome, she has features of a child that has Down syndrome. So I've had people who had children that had severe learning disabilities or other on the autistic spectrum. I've had them say to me, "You're so lucky you have a child with Down syndrome." And
Interesting.
they said, at least when you're walking in the street with your child, if your child acts in a way that's not socially acceptable, people know that your child has Down syndrome, so they kind of excuse it and they don't, they don't become so awkward around her and us.
Oh, that's so interesting. I never thought of that. You're right, because she has the visible signs that something's different.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You see, that's something that you just don't think about when you're not in that exactly. And that's what makes you so uniquely capable of training people to have empathy. Just from like a regular everyday standpoint, I was in the parking lot and an adult was yelling at another adult because he parked in the handicap parking spot and he didn't look like he had any kind of special needs at all. And although I have no idea if that person had a child in the car or an old person or that person was, I know nothing. They had a handicap. They were in the handicap spot and this one guy was freaking out. And I just looked at him and I said, you really never know what someone has or doesn't have by just looking at them. And you can't yell at them for being in the wrong parking spot unless you really know. And I think I kind of embarrassed that dude, but
yeah, well, actually, I don't know if you embarrassed him because to me, I think you educated him. I think that you were in the right place at the right time to observe this interaction. And I think that you probably enriched his life by giving him a little information that maybe he wasn't aware of.
Okay, so. That's a beautiful way. Thank you. I'm a better person than I thought of.
Right, there you go.
So funny. So let's talk about your other kids now, because you have, a huge blessing of a huge family. And how do you manage? So first, before we even manage like how everybody gets their time with you, because I think that's a cute story, but how do you manage just mealtime? I mean, like, do you have like the biggest table that ever existed? Did you have to get a custom table? How do you feed everybody?
So thank God we have a lot of shifts in the house. Like one of my children leaves at 6:15 in the morning. The next one is 6:55, and the other one's 7:20. So and then the older ones. My oldest is 23. My youngest is 8. I'm not carrying around a diaper bag anymore. I'm not carrying around, when I say to the kids, please get into the car and seatbelt yourselves in, they can do it independently, which I think I've arrived. Like now that I look at it and I can leave the house, they can put themselves in the car. I really feel like I'm in like such a lucky place in life. So I'm enjoying that. Yeah, it was a lot of years of very tough experiences. Physically very demanding, between bedtime, I think toilet training was probably my hardest, the hardest time in my life was toilet training.
Oh, wow.
And, and at one point I had my child who had medical concerns and my child with Down syndrome. And then the next one, so I had 3 in diapers and they weren't triplets.
Yeah.
So that was,
all the different stages. I remember when I was toilet training my kids, but it's such a different experience. I have 2. They are 3.5 years apart, not by choice. I lost one in between, but it was so easy, kind of. I mean, I didn't want a third, so I don't know how easy it showed up, but it's like your toilet training one and the other one's already done, except for the regression sometime, that's sort of thing.
Sure,
The most,
sure.
so it feels like just a Herculean task to be just doing that. But I see that I think shifts is really the way to look at it, because yeah, in the morning you've got 3 different shifts going out, and that means in the afternoon you got 3 different shifts. So I guess everybody doesn't have to eat dinner at the same time, and it affords them to feel like they have a smaller unit at times.
Yeah, yeah. And I try to sit with them at each shift. I try to sit with them. So if it's not, one child, it's like 2 or 3. And for them, that feels like it's individual attention, because 2 or 3 is different than, the weekends when everybody eats together is a much larger affair. So as far as like cooking, I'll make a big, huge batch of potatoes and a huge batch of rice and a huge batch of pasta and then a lot of chicken. And then every night the kids can choose what they want. I warm it up for them.
Oh,
And so, yeah, it's not making like a big, huge dinner for everybody. And then, this one doesn't like it. They always have what they want to choose from to eat. Once I did an experiment with them, because I would cook a lot of really good stuff, and I did an experiment because they were complaining, and I bought a package of rye bread, and I put cream cheese on the table, peanut butter, and tuna fish. They were thrilled.
Oh my God, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting,
No.
oh, Mom.
Yeah,
Oh.
no, they were thrilled. And I realized at that point that, I have to supply stuff. If I'm not up to making big, huge things, or if they're not up to eating it, they'll grow out of that. That's what I've seen over time, that a lot of the things that I got stuck on when they were younger, and I would focus on, and I'd get very upset about, they actually grew out of without too much aggravation. So,
we used to have breakfast for dinner. You ever did that?
yeah, that's great. What did you make?
Scrambled eggs, pancakes, waffles, or even frozen waffles with scrambled eggs or omelets. Or my kids used to love that. Actually, there came a point where they were like, "Yeah, Mom, we know why you're doing that. Like, it's the end of the budget month. Don't do that anymore." Like, now they knew. It was like when they were teenagers, they were like,
Yeah.
Till then, they thought it was the cool. Oh, Mom's making breakfast for dinner.
That's great. That's really, really great. And I think it's really nice because we live in a culture in America where, we kind of value a family dinner and everybody sitting down together,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. It doesn't really matter what you're serving, but actually in other countries, they do have breakfast for dinner. So they think it's more healthy to have breakfast for dinner. So if that works for your family, and it's so much easier to manage making a whole bunch of scrambled eggs and just cutting up vegetables, then
Right.
that's great.
Yeah, that was a big one. Even now, when I'm lazy, I have breakfast for dinner, I'll admit. But I was vegan until recently, so it was harder to have breakfast for dinner. But the last few months, now that I'm no longer vegan, I could have scrambled eggs. And boy, whew, does that make things easy.
Yeah.
I make it, I keep it in the fridge with, with vegetables, whatever. And sometimes I'll have that for lunch, but that's me. That's
Yeah.
me, my crazy food habits. All right, so let's talk about how everybody really does get one-on-one time.
Sure.
How do you structure that in your family?
Okay, so typically, I don't actually see so much of an issue with everybody kind of like calling out that they need something, that they need individual attention. One of the things that I do is I have this little office in my house, and that's where I do my life coaching, or just housework stuff that I need to do for my house. And every once in a while, my younger children will say to me, can we go into your office? Like, they want their own session, and I'll go into the office and I'll sit down, and they'll be sitting in my client's chair, and I'll be sitting in my chair, and they feel like they're getting, a session, which is, very special sounding for them. So they know they can do that. They know that when something's serious, if they want to say something private, because that's actually, in a big family, that's actually something that comes up a lot. Children who say that they want to speak to me privately because, and it's usually not such a private thing, but for them it is. And they'll ask me if, they can come to my office. So if I'm not in the middle of anything, or I'll say to them right now, so that they know what to expect. Right now is 8:04. At 8:12, I will meet you in the office.
Ah, yes, that is so important because that really teaches them that you're a person of your word. That was a really big thing for me with my children also. And I have one child who is very literal. She's kind of like me in that way. And if she wanted my attention, then, and I couldn't, or I couldn't even answer a question, whatever it was that she needed from me, and I told her, come to me in 15 minutes, she would get her little timer and put it on 15, and she would come back to me and say, okay, it's 15 minutes. We have to do this now, you know? And I think that's really important and helpful for children to be able to trust their parent and to learn what trust is as they get older.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can trust their mom that if she says, you know, at 8:12 or at 8:15 or at 8:17, we're going to go in that room, then you do that, then that's teaching them what trust looks like. And I think that's a really important social skill, really important life skill.
Right. And your daughter will also grow up knowing that if, if you were reliable and you were, then people can be reliable. And that's, and it just takes the right tool in order to enhance that reliability. And in that case for her, it was the timer.
Yes. And it's interesting that you say reliability because I was married to an alcoholic. He was a functional alcoholic and he was not reliable. He was not abusive in any way. He was he was like, he felt guilty about what he did all the time. So he was always giving us things. So that's kind of how he handled it. And he's been in recovery now for 14 years. And he knows I talk about this. So he got in recovery after the divorce, but I was my kid's rock. Like I was the one they could rely on.
Yeah.
No matter what. And in our divorce, I got 24/7 physical custody and he was allowed to see the kids whenever it was safe. And, that's another video. The way that I handled that was beautiful. And my kids talk about it from their heart now about how beautiful that time was when my ex-husband wasn't reliable. And they learned through me how to treat somebody who's in distress, who's not a bad person, that he's a good person, he's in distress, and he's not reliable or trustworthy right now. So this is what we're going to do so we can still be in a relationship with him and have boundaries.
Wow, you taught them incredible skills to be able to do that, and empathy, because if you were able to do that with somebody who caused so much distress in your life, then you just taught them an invaluable lesson on how to have empathy in the midst of being hurt or in distress, which is it's a high level skill.
Yeah. And we don't talk about it enough, even as life coaches. And I actually did a live video in my Facebook group about that today. I didn't talk a lot about empathy. I just touched on it. And for me, it is so important. I always tell my clients and I always tell the people who come to me, like, you have to have empathy or these people, your children are not going to trust you. They're not going to believe you. If you don't care about them, you don't show them that you can even have an inkling of what they're going through. So let's talk about empathy as like your kids to your special needs and how does your daughter, Yehudis, how can she have empathy? Because I know that they do have some mental limitations and cognitive limitations, and you might not be able to have empathy. So what do you do?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because she, as a person, has more empathy than anybody I've ever met before in my whole life. She doesn't have a filter. So, anything that she feels, she says. And it was interesting because my mother-in-law, who is in a wheelchair and has a lot of trouble walking, had to go down 3 steps from my house to the street level. And my daughter Yehudis was the one that accompanied us outside to help her outside and literally cheered her for every step that she took. And she she kept on like looking at her, looking back and forth at me and at her and saying, are you okay? And, she just sees things, and I'm very inspired by her because I think a lot of us have a lot of filters that are helpful for us because not everything, we think are we supposed to say. But when it comes to being empathetic and having feelings, she's the top. There is nobody who is more empathetic than Yehudis.
Let's just move that for a minute. Let's say I was out there. Well, it wouldn't be us because I think we have this conscious ability. but people who don't have the conscious ability might say, oh, I'm not going to cheer that old person on because then she's going to think we're mocking them. But your daughter didn't think what they might be thinking. She just said,
Right.
oh, I would want to be cheered on if I was doing this hard thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes, I don't even know if she, it's interesting because I don't think she realizes how powerful it is. It's natural to her. Like, I think I once told you the story, but it's an amazing story. Do you know the coolers? The water coolers are like a 5-gallon, big, huge bottle. And in order to put a new one on the cooler, you have to take the old one off, and then you have to lift the other one and put it, and it's very heavy. I have a very hard time. I struggle with that, like
And the
lifting
water
it
has to go in just the right spot without spilling all over the place.
without splashing. Exactly. So my daughter, I'm 4'11 3/4, to give you a little.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I'm 4'11 3/4. I'm very short, and she is, up to my shoulders. She's, and she's thick. She's, chunky. She's thick, and she's the one that replaces it in my house. She picks up that water cooler and she plops it on, and she doesn't splash. And all of us, like, we can't figure out how she's able to do that without struggling so much. And I think that what I've learned from her in that story is that she didn't come to a task thinking that she can't do it already. She didn't assess the situation before she got to it. And I think a lot of us, we assess the situation before we get to it, and we say, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. This is too big for me. This is too overwhelming. And then we come to a task, and then we really can't do it. And I think what I've really learned from her, and I try to employ it in my life, I don't know if I'm always successful, is that if you don't come to something saying that you can't do it ahead of time, it's not as big of a struggle.
Right.
So yeah, that's
a huge lesson. That is so beautiful. Really beautiful lesson.
Yeah.
So how about your other children? How are they around her, and how do they feel about her? How do they present with their friends about her? How does all of that work?
So half of my children were born after. She's a middle child. So they grew up with her in the family. So to them, it's normal to have a child with special needs. My older kids have actually started to work in the field of special needs, running programs, working with children one-on-one. I have a daughter who's studying to be able to teach children with special needs how to play piano. Or musical. She's gone in that direction. And then I have a child who really doesn't want to have anything to do with working with children with special needs. And, it's interesting because I have to kind of say to myself, like, she has it at home. She doesn't need to have it all over in her life. Like, she does great with my daughter at home. She didn't choose to make that her life, and that's also great. So my younger children, they're very proud of her. Mm-hmm. They love to show their friends pictures of her, or bring, kind of like show off with her. Again, she's a very lovable child, and she's very friendly. So it's easier for them to do that than it would be for somebody who had, not a sibling in the house that was much more, had many more, behaviors that were, difficult behavior, challenging.
So she does well with redirection and that sort of thing.
She does very well with redirection. She does not do well in big crowds. When she's in a situation where there's a lot of people around and she's not familiar, she'll act, my kids will say to me, why is she acting so weird? Or, like, why is she not being herself? Why is she acting like, doing things that she wouldn't do under normal circumstances? And so that's, something that we try to gauge. Is this a great place for Yehudis to be, or is it not? Is it, that's always a balance. How do we keep her as part of the family and integrated in the family while giving the kids a break every once in a while? And maybe we'll have somebody who can take her out for a day so that my kids can be free to be in a crowd without being concerned that she's going to be uncomfortable.
That's smart. And you also put her put her in weekend camps or something every now and then. So that's also really, really nice.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel like she's being sent away or anything.
No, she loves the programs. And that's actually something that is that's also a balance. I'll just give you a brief story. So on one hand, they have special performers and they take the kids with special needs away for beautiful weekends and they give them a blast and I mean, more fun than any of my typical kids. You know, they do so many things in art and entertainment and events and, you know, and then, you know, we kind of say like, okay, so we have to treat them like everybody else. But we're not. As a society, we're not. We're giving them all of these special events and entertainers. And so are they special or are they, you know, part of the family? And that's a very big tug of war that I think that is very hard. You know, when I hear somebody say, oh, you have to treat her like everybody else, I say, okay, I'll try to do that, but she's not like everybody else because she, you know, she has a lot more fun than everybody else. She, you know,
Right.
she's
no
got
pressure. She has no pressure. Like life's just fun.
life is fun. She's got a lot of people that want to come and, you know, and entertain her and be with her and play with her and take her out. My other kids don't have people who want to be with them as much as she does. So, so when we say, and this is something that's, you know, it's a real question. It's a real challenge sometimes. How do we give them what they need as far as stimulation and structure and you know, kindness, at the same time as treating them like, you know, just a regular typical member of the family.
And I think there's no straight answer for that. I think
No.
that, you know, first of all, every kid is different. And even typical kids, every kid is different. I used to tell my kids all the time, like, if I would break a cookie in half and give one to one, one to the other, I wouldn't check to see if they were the same size. And it wouldn't matter if they were the same size because you guys are not the same size. You're different. And I think if you operate like that, then it's easier for the special needs kid not to feel singled out or special.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, you know?
Yeah. But she, you know, she actually, Rochelle, she says to people, you know, I have Down syndrome, I have special needs. Like she thinks it's a status thing because whenever she reads. She can read, she can write. So if there's an advertisement or a flyer for you know, for an event for somebody with special needs and she sees it, she knows, you know, she relates to that.
Right. And it's a big deal and it's for her.
And it's for her. So, you know, so there's, you know, it's interesting. One of my kids once said, you know, every family should have a child like Yehudis, you know, like, and it was a very touching moment for me to hear that. Because they know that it's not easy. They know it's difficult. They know that there's a lot of times that she requires so much more. But even with all of that, you know, and they wouldn't say that about a sibling, like another sibling. They say it about her.
But obviously, like the child that said that to you feels that Yehudis really teaches them how to be maybe better people or how to have more fun or how to live in the moment or, you know, like the lessons that she's teaching them is something that your child feels everybody should get.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
really
and it is really beautiful. When I'm working with parents who have children with special needs who don't have such a rosy, you know, I'll call it my Rosie situation. You know, she's like the real blessing for our family. When I'm talking to other parents who don't feel that way and they need, you know, a lot more strength and a lot more, the right measure, I'll put it this way, the right measure of strength.
right.
Because sometimes we don't even, as parents of children with special needs, we don't know what we need. We don't know how much more strength we need. We don't know. So, you know, delegating and getting the right amount of help and you know, being in touch with other parents and networking is tremendous for those parents. You know, they support, you know, it's like if one person can carry a 50-pound rock or 10 people can, it's the same rock, 10 people can carry a 50-pound rock. Obviously, if you have more people that are helping you carry a big load, it's not as daunting.
Right. And I think that's really helpful in any circumstance, like with special needs or with typical kids. It's just, I used to have it on my website and I don't think I still do, but that old African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. And that's what you're talking about because it does. Like sometimes you need a coach, sometimes you need community members. there is a community that my heart is a huge part of. We kind of moved away from there, but we still communicate with them on a very regular basis. And there's a special needs boy in there. He has, I forgot what it's called. He doesn't have a typical thing that, like he has a chromosomal disorder.
Mm.
And so he's visibly special needs and he's limited and he speaks through sign language and he grunts. So he has that, something that could be awkward or something, and there's a thing, I'm Jewish, as you know, but I'm telling YouTube world out there. And in my synagogue, there is this event that happens every year. And this kid absolutely loves this event. It's called Simchas Torah. So you know what that is. And loves this event. It's like he dances and he's jumping and he's so happy with this event at the synagogue. Well, last year with COVID, we didn't have that.
And loss, big, huge loss for him.
Yeah, well, just wait, okay? Because everything was closed, things weren't happening, and that event was completely canceled, like not even a little, or maybe it wasn't last year, it might have been a year before, but whatever, it was like gone. You know what they did? Somebody donated the money to sanitize the synagogue, like with the guys with white suits and the sprays and whatever. And then they had this boy and his family members, all his mother, his father, his aunts, his grandparents, his family members come into the synagogue and do the dancing stuff. And they
wow.
I saw the video, but it's like what you say, like, do they need to be singled out and treated specially? But this kid lives for this every year. Go tell him there's a pandemic. Like,
right.
I don't even know, they had to create that in sign language. How do you say pandemic in sign language? It didn't exist in his world, and this poor guy. And I don't know who came up with that idea, but I cried when I saw that video. And
that's very special. And it's such a, for the family members who had this community to do this for them, was such a boost and just really, so memorable for them, I'm sure. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
To them.
Memorable for me, like, I couldn't believe that. Like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like, how are they even in there? And then I read that they had sanitized the place, and everybody was wearing masks, and it was only his family, plus like my rabbi. So they were wearing masks as they, but it was just something else. Like, to me, that's like huge. And it's because this boy literally lives for that. Like, go tell him he can't do that. So sometimes they might have had to, under some circumstances, like out there in YouTube world, you may have a situation where your child lives for this one thing. And because of the pandemic, or because of finances, or because of travel, or or work, or other circumstances, you can't do the thing that your kid lives for. What do you do? I mean, this community totally came through for this kid, but I don't think it's always possible.
Yeah. The fact that they had that opportunity is tremendous. Wow, kudos. And also, like, when you have, community members that are sensitive to it for their friends, it's just really a beautiful thing. I mean, even the fact that you saw it and you cried and, you just like felt so strongly about it, it really just teaches us all how to be, I would never have thought of doing that, like it would not necessarily have crossed my mind to do something like that for that family or for that child. But when you hear stories of people who have done things like this, kind of gets into your head a little bit more, like, what can I do for somebody else who is struggling with anything that they're struggling with in order to make their lives a little bit brighter? And that's, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, that's the beauty of YouTube. We can see things like that. We can see, how different people, I mean, we see it all day long. We're inundated with it every time we get a WhatsApp or a Facebook or a Messenger or a TikTok or whatever it is.
Right.
And, we see something beautiful, and it's not just for the moment to say, wow, that was special, that was amazing. It's kind of to incorporate into your own life and say, how can I now affect somebody else the way this person or this community member affected, their.
And Bracha, that's why we're life coaches. Like, honestly, what you just said is because you want to make a difference in the world. And to make a difference in the world, you can do empathy training with medical practitioners. You can be a life coach and help a family who really needs it. And that's what we do. People like us care so much that we want to do something that's going to make a difference. And if it's opening a synagogue for a Jewish kid, or Make-A-Wish, sending somebody to Disney, or it's the same thing, but like
Yeah.
people like us want to make a difference. And that's why we do what we do. This was really, really, really wonderful talking to you and getting to know how a large family works and how empathy training works and how just everything beautiful. I'm really blessed to have been able to have this Zoom connection with you.
Yes, and I appreciate the sensitivity that you have for this community, and that you're really out there trying to, bring new knowledge or new thoughts to people out there. So thank you.
You're welcome. And so for the rest of you, I want you to, if you like this video, please subscribe and select notifications so that you will get notifications whenever we put more videos. And this is Coach Red and Bracha Lavranov. We will love to talk to you in the comments. Talk to you soon. Bye.